Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Recharging the Human Battery here on AM 950 Radio. Dr. Cinecropia is out today, so you get me again, Mandi Dickey, nurse practitioner, talking about a topic that's probably going to make me a little bit of a Grinch today. So we are deep into the holiday season, and in our clinic, we've been getting gifts dropped off to us from different vendors that we work with, different organizations that we pair up with, other clinics, patients, and those gifts tend to be sweet. Chocolates. We've had chocolates upon chocolates. We each got a box of chocolates in our mailboxes. Plus, we had this ginormous box of the Lindor truffles that was delivered this week, and we, as a group, did quite a number on that box pretty rapidly. That was my lunch one day. I decided I didn't need any other calories other than that. So yes, I eat it. I go for the devil there with that one. But today I'm going to be a bit of a Grinch and talk about what the trouble is with all of this sugar that we have. So when we're talking about recharging our human battery and what can we do to be healthy with all of this, number one would probably be to take out the sweets in our diet. And we're going to talk about why today. So where does this all come from? When we think about where our taste develops, the very first taste that we have a preference for as humans after birth is sweet. It's the first thing that we can taste on our tongue. It's the first thing that we appreciate. So if you give a baby sweets, think about if you give them something sweet at some point, they just kind of go gaga for it. It's gaga, huh? There you go. Pun intended. They're going for that sweet thing because it tastes good and they have that flavor. And I still remember when one of my kids was about 1 year old, it was the first time we gave him ice cream. And we have a picture of him like holding this ice cream cone with his hand up in the air. And we kind of tagged it with the meme that said, "Thank you, Jesus," because he absolutely loved his ice cream on that one. And that sweet flavor gets us. And that starts to change our brains a little bit. When we have that sweetness, that sugar, it actually activates dopamine in our brain. It hits that center where we get that opioid response, the dopamine response, that feel-good response. And we can actually start to see addictive qualities with sugar. So there's a lot of controversy. Is it an actual addiction? Is it not an actual addiction? We'll get kind of into that a bit today and what addiction actually looks like. What are the symptoms of addiction? And can sugar actually be a true addiction? So that's going to be one of the things we're going to talk about today. And then we're going to talk about just how we can try to control it in our diet on a regular day-to-day. What can we do lifestyle-wise that may be a little bit healthier and still taste as good and still hit those receptors in our brain and still get the feel-goods, but without all of the negative side effects with it? And we don't often think about the negative side effects, but think about if you have something sweet, and I know some people who don't like chocolate, and more power to them because then they don't have to worry about that whole willpower factor. But if you have something sweet in front of you, think about whether or not you can take one bite and put it away, or if you just keep going at it. It's kind of like the idea of the potato chips. You can't eat just one potato chip. And oftentimes you can't eat just one little bit of chocolate. You go for like the whole thing. And we had Halloween recently. We had the little fun size candies, and people justify it a lot. Well, it's just a fun size. It's not as bad, but it takes about 3 of those to match one full size candy bar. So if you're having, a few fun size candy bars as you're passing out the Halloween candy, you're probably getting a little bit more sugar than you need to. So this time of year is really awful for all of that because we have Halloween, we have Thanksgiving, which usually has a lot of desserts, and then all of the other holidays that come after that. So lots to talk about today, looking at this idea of sugar addiction. And again, yes, I'm being the Grinch, but we are going to talk about all of those things when we come back from the break on the other side here on AM 950 Radio. Again, I'm Mandi Dickey, Grinch extraordinaire. AM 950 radio with Recharging the Human Battery. Again, as I mentioned before the break, Dr. Cinecropi's out today, so you've got me, Mandi Dickey, and I'm going to call myself Grinch extraordinaire today, as I mentioned before the break, because I'm a bit of a Grinch when I talk about the sugars here. It's holiday season, and there's candy and sweets everywhere. There's a dessert for every meal, it seems, right now. And if you celebrate Christmas, you are probably looking at putting some candy in the stockings for your kids. And I've had friends that celebrate Hanukkah as well, and there's some candy involved there. There's some sweets. So, whatever holiday it is that you're celebrating this year, there's probably some sweets involved. Even when we get to New Year's, there's always something sweet there, whether it's just a beverage of choice or something. And when we talk about sugars, it's not just the foods, it is the beverages also. So first off, let's talk about what are sugars, because I think sometimes people get a little confused. We have natural sugars in our life and our foods, and we have added sugars. So what are those natural sugars? Sugar is naturally found in several foods, including fruits, milk, and then some of the plants like those sugarcane and beets and the more starchy types of plants. Natural sources of sugar do tend to contain beneficial compounds, different nutrients. There's a lot of fiber in some of those. So it goes through your body better. It gets processed better in your system, and your body knows what to do with those natural sugars, to be honest. When we talk about added sugars, those added sugars go into processed foods. Anything that comes in a package, anything that's pre-packaged, other than like vegetables that come in a bag, because vegetables do come in a package, but they're not processed. They are as they are. When you get whole foods, meats, vegetables, fruits, those things come as a unit. So whatever comes in that, your body knows what to do with it, knows how to break it down. So if there's sugar involved in those things, there's typically something else that you get a benefit from it, and you get different nutrients from those foods. When we have the processed foods, anything that comes in a package, breads, cereals, sweets, anything pre-packaged that is considered a convenience food. And those convenience foods really came out in the 1980s. I kind of blame my own gender for wanting to go back to work when we had dual income households. When we had both parents working outside of the house, it was really important to get these comfort foods that were convenient, because wives didn't have as much time to cook the food anymore like they used to. So we needed these convenience foods. And those convenience foods included TV dinners, boxed meals, the rice-a-roni types of things, the hamburger helper. All of those things have a lot of carbs in them. Carbs break down into sugars in our body. That's how we use them. But those processed foods tend to get that quick spike in blood sugar. So that's a quick fuel, but there's typically not a lot of nutrients in it. You get the sugar, you get the fuel, but your body doesn't need all of that fuel at that one given time. And you're not getting the other nutrients like you would with the whole foods, the fruits, the vegetables, the meats, things like that. So any kind of starchy food is going to have that sugar content. It's going to break down into sugars in your body. That's going to include whole grains, potatoes, corn, beans, pastas, all of those things that we think of as really good, yummy comfort foods. Those all break down into sugars in our body. So when we think about how many carbs we have in a day, I think about when I was growing up as a kid, we'd have cereal in the morning or toast in the morning, and we'd have a sandwich at lunch, and we might have some crackers or something as a snack when we got home. And then there was always potatoes or a dinner roll or rice or pasta or something with dinner. So we were having carbs all throughout the day, and we've been told this is a good thing because our body needs carbs to create energy and all these things. But you can actually get carbs from other means, like your vegetables and your fruits, that have that more natural source to it. So starches are considered complex carbs. It takes more work to break them down in the body. And then we have simple carbs. Those are the actual sugars. Again, that's what's found in those natural things, fruit, milk, honey. And then we have syrups, added sugars in the processed foods, any desserts, sodas, candies, any sweet type of beverage. Any of those things would be that simple carb. And those simple carbs tend to spike our blood sugar a little bit more than the complex carbs, which is why we usually talk about those whole grains as being healthy carbs and healthy starches. And was just having the conversation before we hit record about even those potatoes. When we look at those starchy foods, not all potatoes are created equal. When you get that white russet potato, please don't be fooled on that. There's actually no real good nutritional value that comes out of a russet potato. Does that mean I never eat a russet potato? No. It makes a really good baked potato. And we do probably about once every couple months, we'll do a loaded baked potato for dinner. But then we're also putting vegetables and meat and all sorts of other stuff on top of it. So it's not just that russet potato. But when you're looking at potatoes, if you choose a yellow potato or a red potato, or better yet, even a sweet potato or yam, or the purple sweet potatoes, the garnet sweet potatoes, those all have nutritional value to them. The more colorful the potato, the more nutrients there is in it, typically. Now, granted, we've done a lot of bad things to our foods over the years, and there's not quite as much nutrition in them as there should be still. But typically, the more colorful the food, the more nutrients that you're getting from it. So those white potatoes really don't have much. They're just pure starch. It's a filler. It's not really doing much for you nutritionally. So again, choose the whites, choose the reds, choose the sweet potatoes. Those are, or excuse me, not the whites, the yellows. Yellow potatoes, gold potatoes, red potatoes, and then the sweet potatoes. Those are going to have more nutritional value for you. So you're not just getting the starch, you're actually getting the nutrients as well. And then all carbs in general, whether we're looking at simple carbs, complex carbs, regardless of what term we're using, all of those carbs break down into sugars. The kind of caveat there is that if it contains a fiber, it doesn't really count. Because when you have fiber and sugar at the same time, the fiber helps that move through your body, so your body isn't absorbing as much of the sugar. So I'm going to stop on this for a moment and give a good example. So when we're considering orange juice, for example, this is a really, really good way to kind of think about this. You can get orange juice with pulp. You can get orange juice without pulp. Personally, I love the without pulp because I don't like the texture. But that's just a texture type of thing. You're not getting the fiber. You're not getting that pulp as the fiber. So when you're choosing a juice, the orange juice with the pulp, with the fiber, is going to be better for you nutritionally than the orange juice without the pulp, even though it's just kind of a texture thing in there. The orange juice with the pulp has the fiber, so it doesn't really count as much for the sugars because of that fiber. That fiber tends to push it through. Now, that said, when we're doing oranges versus juice, eating the orange is better than drinking the juice. And I'm going to tell you why here on this one too. When we eat the orange, we tend to feel full more easily. So we eat the orange, we get full on the orange, we're less likely to overconsume the calories and the sugar. The juice tends to be more of a treat in that aspect because it's not as filling, you don't get as satisfied with it, you tend to have bigger glass of it. And just for comparison's sake, one glass of orange juice typically takes about 4 oranges to create. So you have 4 times the sugar and the calories with really minimal fiber compared to eating that actual orange. So again, when you eat the orange, you get the pulp, you're getting the fiber, you're also getting antioxidants, and all of those things slow down that sugar absorption. So you're not going to get the big spikes in your blood sugar afterwards. You're not going to get that big rush of calories and sugar into your system as if you were drinking 4 oranges in that glass that you're doing. So order of preference, you've got the juice with the pulp over the juice without the pulp, but you've got the actual orange over either of the juices. So food for thought on that one, pun intended. What about addiction? So when we talk about this idea of sugar addiction, there's been a lot of research done on addiction, what addiction looks like, what kind of symptoms people display when they have addiction. If we're using the thought that sugar can be an addictive quality, that you can have addiction to sugar, what's that going to look like based on all of the different research that we know those symptoms pop up as? One is intense cravings. So when you have those urges for sweets, even when you're not hungry, you just want chocolate, you want something sweet. You're not really hungry, but you want something sweet. That tends to lend more a little toward that sugar addiction. If you go through withdrawal symptoms, so if you try to quit And there are many ways that you can quit sugar. You can try to taper off, you can try to cut back, you can try to go cold turkey. This is just like with smoking and any other addiction. There are multiple ways to quit. You can't do a patch for sugar, though. So it's not like a nicotine patch. There's no sugar patch as far as I know. When we look at doing all of those, if you withdraw the sugar and you have irritability, you just kind of feel off, you get moody, you get headaches, you get mental fog, fatigue, any of those when you're trying to cut back or you go cold turkey, that also can be a sign of addiction because you needed that to keep these little symptoms at bay. If you are binging sugar, and I think all of us know what binging is by now, but just in case you don't, binging is when you have a consumption of a large amount of something and then sometimes followed by shame or guilt. So in this case, it would be consuming a large amount of sugar with maybe feeling some shame or guilt afterwards. So that can kind of go with one of these other ones with hidden use, because you might then start to lie about the addiction or the use of sugar or hide that sugar consumption, meaning you ate all those candies and you hide the wrappers. You tuck them in the back cushion of the couch or behind the couch. And I have teenagers at home and I've found the wrappers in those different places. So somebody's not being truthful about that sugar intake. And that usually goes along with that sugar addiction when you're trying to hide the evidence of what you did, because you don't want other people to see how much candy you actually ate. And then there's the idea of tolerance. So when you have an addiction to something, it typically takes more of that thing to get that same good feeling. So now if you are eating a couple of those little candy bars every day, so you got the little fun-sized, quote, fun size that they have, you're eating a couple of them every day, and it doesn't quite hit that sweet tooth anymore. And then you add another one, and then you add another one. Your tolerance builds up. So you need more of that sugar to get that same feel good. That's the same as with other addictions. You need more to get that same feeling. That's also another sign of addiction then. And then loss of control. When you repeatedly try to cut back or quit or take it out of your life and you fail over and over and over, even though you know the negative effects. And this is more similar to like smoking and alcohol. You know that there are bad effects to it, but you keep doing it anyway, and you're not really that successful at quitting. The same can be said for sugar. When people lose that control and they try to quit and they try to cut it out of their diet, but it still sneaks right back in and you're right back where you started again. And then using sugar as a coping mechanism. If you're using any addictive, whatever it may be, for coping mechanism, you use it when you have stress, when you're anxious, when you're bored, when you have negative emotions. And that's kind of your comfort thing. So a lot of people will gravitate towards sugar as being that coping mechanism. When they're stressed, they eat chocolate. When they're anxious, they eat chocolate. When they're bored, they eat chocolate. Or if you're not a chocolate person, you're doing some other kind of sweet thing that you're getting that sweet in because that's bringing you comfort. That's, again, another sign of potential addiction. And as I mentioned when we first started the show, there is a lot of controversy on whether or not sugar is a true addiction or when it can be a true addiction. But the food addictions have been shown in lots of research now to be plausible due to using the same pathways being activated as addictive drugs. I mentioned the opioid receptors and the dopamine receptors. It's been proven time and time again in animal models that this has the same kind of addictive quality, the same addictive pathway in sugar as with addictive drugs. So again, it is very plausible that it's the same in humans, and we see it all the time. We just don't like to admit to it. The thing with that is that we're looking at all of the research. And this was kind of eye-opening for me when I looked back. I didn't realize how long we've been aware of this and still trying to pretend that we don't know about it. But early medical warnings came out with this in the 1800s. 200 years we've been dealing with these warnings and people still are not listening. So you probably won't listen to me today either, as little Miss Grinch here. But I'm still going to bring out the facts for you. So Time magazine highlighted there was a diet from the 1860s that highlighted the link with sugar and obesity and diabetes. 1860s, we identified this link, and we still haven't figured out a way to improve our nutrition here in the United States. So it's a problem that is not going to be fixed overnight, but I'm trying to plant the seed for you all so that you can try to think of ways that you can maybe improve your own health on this, so that you don't lead down the road toward obesity, toward diabetes. And we have a crisis with obesity. We already talked about this on the show. And we have a lot of issues with diabetes and prediabetes, and more people are pre-diabetic now than ever before. And when I first started working as a nurse practitioner over a decade ago, I remember learning at that point that if we all live to be old enough, we will all have diabetes. And that shouldn't be the case, but it is because of all of these processed foods that we've introduced and all of this processed sugar and added sugar that we've added to our diet that shouldn't be there, but it's causing all of these health issues that we have. So 1860s, we already knew it was there, but we've kind of put our blinders on. We didn't think about it. In the 1970s, that's when we created this phenomenal thing called high fructose corn syrup. So high fructose corn syrup started being added to processed foods all over the place, and it dramatically increased our sugar intake. And you really can say that our eating patterns have been forever changed. They will not ever be what they were probably before we created this high fructose corn syrup. So people often ask, well, what's the difference? Corn is a vegetable. Corn is a starchy vegetable. It is a very starchy vegetable. And when you add corn to all of these different things, corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, all of these things, it's very starchy. It breaks down into sugar. That is all sugar that you're eating when you have something that has high fructose corn syrup. So think of like corn oil. High fructose corn syrup. That's exactly what it is. And that spikes our blood sugar. That leads us down the road toward prediabetes, diabetes, obesity, all of these different issues with our digestive system, with our ability to metabolize the foods that we should have, leading to metabolic syndrome. So we have all of these terms, these medical terms that come from the addition of sugar into our diets. So again, Grinch here. In 2008, we really started identifying it. So as if the research that was done in the 1860s wasn't enough, and knowing that we did this thing back in the 1970s, and knowing that wasn't enough, in 2008, this was the first time we really put it into research here in the United States in current times. Princeton University was the first of the studies to show the similar effects between sugar and drugs on the brain. 2008. We are in 2025, the end of 2025, almost 2026. And we've known about this since 2008. So I still have a problem with the fact that we haven't changed our diet and our nutrition since then. In the 2010s, the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, even did more research on the addictive properties of sugar. So we have this established decade after decade after decade, yet we still have a lack of action on trying to reduce these sugars in our diet as a whole. So again, I have a major issue with that. But here we go. So what does it do to our health? So we know this all exists. We've seen the research. You've at least heard that the research is out there. If you haven't seen it, this research is out there to show the addictive qualities of sugar being the same as addictive drugs. But what other things does it do to your health? We have the metabolic disorders. I mentioned metabolic syndrome. We have a significantly increased risk of type 2 diabetes. So type 1 diabetes has always been known as the childhood diabetes. You're born with it. You have this intrinsic inability to create insulin in your own body. Your pancreas isn't working, and then you need to take insulin injections. So that type 1 diabetes was always thought of as insulin dependent. But we have this new rise in type 2 diabetes being also insulin dependent, because we have now shut down our body's own ability to create and utilize insulin in the body appropriately in response to all of these processed sugars that we've introduced. So type 2 diabetes is no longer the non-insulin dependent, because we have so many people with type 2 diabetes on insulin because of, again, these changes that we've done in our diet without really concern for it. And then the rise in obesity, sugar can lead to hypertension, so high blood pressure, heart disease, fatty liver disease. All of these come from that increase in processed foods, the increase in sugars, those processed sugars into our diet. Sugar leads to inflammation. So when we have any kind of disease process that has inflammatory markers, when we draw your blood, we can look for different inflammatory markers. Just having that increased sugar in your diet can lead to those inflammatory markers being elevated. So those inflammatory markers, when we look at them, they are not specific to any one particular disease process, but when they're elevated, it shows that there's inflammation in your body kind of widespread. And then when we have any kind of autoimmune condition, that also gets triggered or flared because of sugar intake. So the more sugar you take in, the more problems you're going to have with autoimmune disease. Uh, Autoimmune arthritis kind of being the number one. So people, when they're having more sugar intake, they're going to notice more issues with joint pains and aches because of that increased sugar. But oftentimes people aren't putting those things together and putting two and two together and thinking that, I'm eating a lot of sugar lately and I'm having more arthritis issues. I'm having more joint pains. They really are related. So need to stop and kind of take that in for a moment. And then mental health. There is a very strong link between depression, anxiety, memory loss, adult onset ADHD because of the increased sugar use that we have. So think about all of the people running around that have ADHD. If we could decrease their sugar intake, we would probably decrease a little bit of that distractibility that they have. And even I have a child on the autism spectrum. When we reduce his sugar intake, he has less behaviors. So does it cause autism? No. Can it reduce the unwanted behaviors with autism? Yes. So if you can do it, why not do it? Just decrease that sugar a little bit and decrease some of those mental health issues. We already have a shortage of mental health providers. Let's cut down the sugar and we don't have to worry about that as much. Maybe, it's there. And then skin and oral health. So these kind of seem simple, but when we take in a lot of sugar, it also weakens our skin. So we end up with wrinkles, sagging skin, dullness in our skin. And then oral care, I think that one kind of goes without saying, but when we eat a lot of sugar, we can end up with problems with our teeth. We can end up with increased cavities, tooth decay, other periodontal diseases. So again, taking in all those sugars, that increases your risk for skin problems with teeth problems. So it's not just the sugar that we're taking in that's causing spikes in our blood sugar. It's causing all of these systemic issues that we can see that we don't really want to talk about them being related, but they really are. So how do we break the habit? How do we stop this sugar intake that we have just kind of gone on this roller coaster and we are going up and up and up on our sugar intake? How do we stop it? How do we bring it back down? There are lots of different ways that you can do it. Some of the best things are modifying your environment. Of course, if you don't have it in your availability, you're not going to eat it. When I do get a sweet craving, if I don't have something sweet in my house, I don't get in my car and go to the store and buy it because I'm a little too lazy for that, I'll be honest. I'm not going to drive to the store and go get it if I don't have it. So not having it in your house is probably number one. Just don't keep it there. If you have it there, it's going to tempt you. So don't have it in the house. You're not going to be as tempted, whether it's the beverages or the candies or the sweets or the donuts, all the things that raise that blood sugar and cause us to be unhealthy. Don't have them in the house. Does that mean we don't do donuts in my house? No, I have 3 teenagers still living in the house. We do donuts every once in a while, but it's not an everyday thing. I've taught my kids from an early age, I'm like, sweets are a sometimes food. We don't have dessert every night either. Shocker. We don't have a dessert every night because it's not a healthy thing to have dessert every night. And if you have it every night, you're going to want it every night. So then if you go without it, then you're going to have those withdrawal symptoms we talked about a little bit ago. So try not to do that. If you don't have it in the house, you're going to be less tempted. Try to adjust your diet. There are a lot of things that you can substitute. Years ago, I bought a couple of books that I think they were called Eat This, Not That or something. And they gave you alternative food choices for some of the unhealthier things that we can eat in our diet. So if you have a craving for fast food, that's a lot of carbs when you get all the fries and the burger. Those burger buns are huge. That's more carbs than anybody needs in a meal. But when you get fast food and you get the burger with the big gigantic bun and that big pile of fries, you're getting more carbs in that meal than you probably need in an entire day. So if you switch it out, and that's when I switched to making sweet potato fries at home, switch it out for sweet potato fries, fry them in a smaller amount of oil so you're not like bathing your carbs in the unhealthy vegetable oils either. Smaller amount of coconut oil is what I use. Then you're getting the healthy benefits from that, from the sweet potatoes rather than the russet potatoes. And if you switch out the bread for a flatbread or something else rather than in a big bun, we did a lot of these switches for Eat This, Not That, just switching some of those things little by little. If you try to switch it all at one time, you're not going to like it and you're not going to stick to it. But if you take one thing at a time and just kind of make a healthier substitution, you can still eat those things and it's not going to be as big of a problem for you. So swap out some of those natural sugars as well. That's another really good option for you. We talked about the eating the oranges rather than drinking the juices. Fruit juice in general is not going to have the fiber. If you eat an apple, you get the skin of the apple, which has the fiber in it. That fiber is pushing the sugar of the apple through your system, so you're not absorbing as much of it. If you drink the apple juice, you're getting all the sugar and none of the fiber. So you're getting that spike in your blood pressure. You're not getting the healthy benefits from the fiber in the apple itself. So switching out the fruits for the juices, switch out the fruits for the sweets. I've again, trained my kids pretty well. I don't claim that they are perfect, but I've trained my kids pretty well. If they want something sweet, I tell them there's fruit in the fridge. Go grab a piece of fruit. And that's often what they do. Sometimes they'll dunk it in some Nutella, so they get some kind of cocoa in there, but they're still healthier alternatives than some of the other things you can do. So fruits, healthy nuts, legumes, any of those things are going to have the natural sugars. So if you swap those out for the other sweets that have the added sugars to them instead, you're getting that more natural sugar. Your body knows more of what to do with it. So try some of those little swaps. And then again, thinking about those sugary drinks. When we have sodas or energy drinks or the sweetened waters, I have a lot of patients that come through and they say they hate water. They don't like to drink water plain, so they get the flavored waters. Those flavored waters often have either sugar or artificial sugars in them. So let me take a moment to talk about the artificial sugars for a moment too. So artificial sugars are still sugar, and your body actually doesn't know what to do with them. So there have been plenty of research studies throughout the years that also showed artificial sugars, they also spike your blood sugar because they put this sugar into your system. Your body thinks that it needs to respond to it, so it sends out insulin to try to break down the sugar, but insulin can't break down the artificial sugars. So then it starts to put more glucose into the system. So then you have the spike in the blood sugar. So it actually spikes your blood sugar more than eating sugar, if you can fathom that. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So when we start telling diabetics that they should be drinking diet sodas, or telling the general population drink a diet soda instead of a regular soda because it's healthier for you, it's really not. Any kind of soda is still going to have sugar, whether it's sugar or artificial sugar, and they're both going to cause spikes and they're both going to lead to metabolic issues down the road. So none of them are ideal. What should you do instead? What can you do instead? Sparkling water. You're still getting a little fizziness, and they are often flavored with natural flavors then. So you're not getting all of the sugars in there. Or tea. You could do it cold or hot, whichever you prefer. Tea is going to be a little bit better for you also because it has a little bit of that sweetness to it, but you don't have to add a lot. With the caveat being, don't then make a cup of tea and add 2 scoops of sugar or a big dollop of honey into it, because you're still going to get all the sugars. So tea without, you can get the flavored ones that taste pretty good and you don't need to add anything to them. But swapping out those sugary beverages for the non-sugary beverages. If you like your morning coffee, try to find a way to get yourself toward black coffee, because black coffee, you're going to get the health benefits of the coffee. There are health benefits. There's a lot of antioxidants in coffee. And I have this conversation with patients all the time. It's not that coffee is bad for you. Coffee with caffeine is dehydrating, so you want to increase your water intake. Yes, you make coffee with water, but once the water goes through the beans, you now have a dehydrating beverage because it has the caffeine in it. If you get decaf coffee, that's a different subject. But once you have that coffee with the caffeine, you're now getting into that dehydration category. That said, if you are loading up your coffee with sweeteners and flavorings and everything, you're not getting the benefits. I've started doing this thing. If I go to Caribou with the kids or Starbucks with the kids, I do the half sugar. I cut down that flavoring by half because I don't need all of that sugar. It still tastes really good with half the sugar in it. And even if you're doing that on a daily basis and you're cutting down, you're still going to cut down your sugars quite a bit. So just those little swaps, trying to make yourself a little bit healthier, highly, highly advisable. The next thing you can do to kind of really identify where it is first just monitor your intake. And I do caution people on this one. Don't monitor it so much that you become like OCD with this and you have to look at every single gram of sugar that you're taking into your body. Approximate is probably okay. And even if you approximately decrease your sugar intake, it's still going to be better than the sugar intake that you're probably taking in right now. So first off, I would say do some food journaling. Figure out what you're actually eating on a daily basis right now. I did this years ago and I was shocked to find out how many grams of carbs and grams of sugar I was taking in every day. It was during the holidays. Somebody had a little bucket of Kisses, the Hershey Kisses on their desk. And anytime I walked by, grab a little Hershey Kiss. Have you ever looked up how many calories and how much sugar is in one Hershey Kiss? I'm not going to say it on the radio right now. I'm going to let you do that on your own time so that you can get that same shock factor in when you look at it. But one of those little Hershey Kisses, it is literally shocking how much sugar and calories is in those. So when you start doing that food journaling, don't write down just the things that you want to admit to. You don't have to show this to anybody. This is for you. Write down what you eat in a day and then calculate how many grams of sugar and carbs you're actually taking in. And I think you might be unpleasantly surprised at what you're taking in on a daily basis. I think most of us would be unpleasantly surprised. I rarely come across somebody who really, truly eats as they should and they don't get any of these things in their diet, but most of us have a vice somewhere, and it's usually the sweets. So start with the food journaling, figure out what exactly you're taking in, because that's how you figure out what you need to do. You can't act on it if you don't have all the data. So again, this is why you write it down. Don't hide anything. So if you had 5 Hershey Kisses, write that on your food journal so you could calculate how much you took in. Don't say, oh, I had 1 and I was really good. No, you weren't. You had 5. Janet, eat it. Take credit for it. Sorry for anybody named Janet out there. Just kind of threw that name out. But if you had it, write it down, keep track of it, figure out what you're actually taking in on a daily basis so that you know how to act on it. So that's number 1. And then start reading the labels and watching for hidden sugars. What do I mean by hidden sugars? Things that end in ose, sucrose, dextrose, sucralose, or even the syrups, malt syrup, high fructose corn syrup, any of those things, they're going to have sugar. Those are AKA sugar, also known as sugar. So it's not always going to say sugar. And the other thing to keep track on those labels is the included sugar versus the added sugar. And it should include the fiber in there too. So for example, if something has 10 grams of sugar, but it has 2 grams of fiber, you have 8 grams of net sugar that you have there, because you can take out a couple of those by doing the math with that fiber. Fiber takes away some of that sugar, so it doesn't all count as long as it's got fiber in it. But those added sugars, that's where we have to be very cautious. Again, because some foods come naturally with sugar in them, and that's okay as long as you're not overdoing those things. And then we talked about the full size versus the fun size candy bars. Really count how many of those fun size candy bars you have in a day. As I mentioned earlier in the show, typically it's about 3 of those fun size candy bars to equal a full size candy bar. Just to show you some numbers on this one, a full size candy bar has in general somewhere between 220 and 270 calories. So when we're thinking about a 2,000 calorie diet, which is most people, but a lot of people are doing less than that. In a 2,000 calorie diet, that's 10% of your diet that's coming from that candy bar. So 10% of your diet you've now just had in a candy bar that has no nutritional value to you other than sugar. Take that one in for a moment. And there's typically about 18 to 30 grams of sugar in that candy bar, one single candy bar. And that number is going to be really important. I want you to hang on to that number as we go into the last break of the show here today. Think about that number. That average candy bar, full-size candy bar, has somewhere between 18 to 30 grams of sugar. Because when we come back from the break, the first thing I'm going to talk about is how many grams of sugar we should be taking in a day. So there's a little teaser for you. Come back after the break, and you'll find out how many grams of sugar you should be having. Again, here on AM 950 Radio, Recharging the Human Battery. I am Mandi, a.k.a. Grinch today. All right, welcome back one last time here on AM 950 Radio with Recharging the Human Battery. Again, Dr. Cindy Cropey has been out today, so you've got just me, Mandi the Grinch today. And if you've been listening along, you understand why I've been calling myself the Grinch, because we're in the holiday season with sweets all over the place, and I am the anti-sugar today. So before the break, I was telling you how much sugar is in that full-size candy bar. So before I spew out the number again, I'm going to see if you remember it. I know you can't tell me through the show, but think of and see if you can remember that number in your head. Again, it was 18 to 30 grams of sugar in one candy bar. So if you're thinking about the fact that, on those commercials, you're not yourself if you are hungry, so eat a Snickers. That Snickers, I love Snickers, but there's a lot of sugar. There's a lot of calories in that candy bar. So how much sugar is recommended? The American Heart Association recommends for women 25 grams of sugar max per day. For men, 36 grams of sugar daily max per day. That candy bar has 18 to 30 grams of sugar. If you have that candy bar, you potentially have just maxed out your sugar for the day, your added sugar for the day as a female, and almost there for a male. So do you really want to have that candy bar when you can't have any other sugar the rest of the day? So this American Heart Association, we're looking at the added sugars. They're not considering the natural sugars, the things that have fiber, the things that are going to go through your body normally, the process the way that they're supposed to. It's considering only those added sugars. So 25 grams for women, 36 grams for men. Again, because our biology is different, males get to have a little bit more sugar. Jealous on that part, kind of. But the confusing part here is that the diabetic education that we provide for people that have diabetes, and I remember years ago, I sat in a diabetic education class with my dad after he had a heart attack, and they were going through how many grams of carbs you should have in a meal. And yes, that total grams of carbs is the natural carbs and the added carbs, the processed carbs. So we're talking in general, 45 to 60 grams of carbs per meal is what's recommended. 3 to 4 carb choices if you're looking at that math with it. So in a meal, 45 to 60 grams of carbs. In a snack, 15 to 30 grams of carbs, 1 to 2 carb choices. So a carb choice, a carb serving, is 15 grams of carbs. But if you look further into this, 1 gram of carbs is equal to 1 gram of sugar. So our math isn't mathing right now. When we're telling people how many carbs that they should have at each meal when they're a diabetic versus how many carbs you should have, how many sugars you should have in a day in general for your health, to prevent diabetes, to prevent metabolic disease, to prevent obesity, all of these things. The math isn't mathing. We're telling people to eat too many carbs. We're telling people to eat too much sugar in a day. We are all going to end up with diabetes if we follow our standard American diet. So where are the highest culprits? Where are we seeing it most? Soft drinks, the fruit drinks, the fruit juices we talked about, the desserts, cookies, ice cream, cakes, donuts, all of those yummy things, candy, sandwiches, because there's a lot of bread in a sandwich, breakfast cereals and bars, convenience foods. It's really easy. Sweetened yogurt, coffees and teas that have the additives in it that we talked about. All of those things have a lot of sugar. There are other things that have sugar in it as well. They're just not as high on the counts when you look it up. So for lifestyle, how can we manage this? Stay hydrated. A lot of time when we crave something, we're actually thirsty. So go for the water first. Maybe you won't reach for the sweets. Getting adequate sleep. If you're sleeping well, you're not going to be craving that rush of energy either. Get active. Exercise releases the same endorphins that you have with a sugar rush. And you can actually get a satisfying craving by one bite. Now, many of us can't do that, but if you can, try to stick to one bite, one square of chocolate, and then put the rest away so you can try to be a little bit healthier. Swap out some of those other choices that we talked about. There was a lot of things that we covered in this show today, and I hope something was helpful for you to figure out how you can maybe not call me the Grinch on the sugar in this holiday, but try to be healthier and recharge your own human battery. Thanks for being here today. See you next time.